I'm Daniel Suarez. I'm the conservation manager for Audubon Great Lakes. It's for my first time addressing this body, but my boss, Matt Miller, has been here on a few occasions and sends his regards. I just wanted to provide you a bit of an update. This will be really quick, and I apologize a little bit fast, trying to get through a lot of information in a short amount of time, but wanted to give you some idea as to how the dollars that you're graciously funding our organizations and our partnership are being spent. So just want to start by talking a little bit about water levels. Obviously 2021 was a dry year, at least in the last couple of years, a little bit less severe in Northwest Indiana than what we were seeing in the Chicago area. But you can see just really quickly here, these pink lines are the 2021 water levels, and at places like MLK, those levels were the lowest that we've seen them, which provides us a really interesting opportunity for management and gives us another tool in our fight against Phragmites. So this picture was from Martin Luther King, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the activities that we were able to undertake last year due to those low water levels. This is going to be hard for you to see, so I'll just summarize this really quickly. This is the newest published data that we have. It's our Calumet Marshburg report for 2021. We've got an Illinois report, an Indiana report, and this is basically our 11 focal species that we've got along the top here. And then these are all the sites where we're doing monitoring. These are just the Indiana sites. We have a whole nother set of sites on the Illinois side, but just wanted to call out those low water levels overall negatively impacted the abundance of birds that we were seeing at these sites. However, sites like Highland Rookery, Chase Street, Grant Street, and MLK had anywhere from 8 to 5 of those 11 focal species. So even though the numbers of overall birds were down, we're really happy to see that as these habitats are continuing to change, the vegetation structure is changing due to the intensive management that we've been doing, the birds are still responding favorably. And just to get just a really quick snapshot of 3 sites that you all own. Chase Street / Grant Street. I think some of our organizations call it Chase Street, some Grant Street, but east of Chase Street here, this unit, very low water levels as well. But you can kind of see in this top left picture the response in the seed bank. So as the water recedes, the sun is heating up the soil. It's stimulating all of these seeds that have been latent in that soil for years, decades, maybe even a century. In some cases, science shows that those seeds can stay viable. So they're waiting for the right conditions. When water levels drop, you get a flush of vegetation. And assuming that the water levels go up in 2022, that's going to create the perfect conditions for the hemi-marsh that we've been trying to establish, where we have a really nice mixture of open water and vegetation, little pockets for birds, for these marsh birds to actually nest in. And then on the right, you see here, these are some of the treatment areas that your dollars helped fund through contractor work. These are areas that were treated for Phragmites. So these represent the more upland areas of these sites, but really intensive Phragmites management work that was happening. And we're really encouraged by the early results of that. Obviously, we'll have to see in 2022 how that response is being maintained over time, but we've set into motion the right management to keep these areas healthy in the long run. Bouncing over to to Highland Rookery here, similar story. You can see in the top left, this is a picture that was taken last fall. This you can see in the foreground is all dead Phragmites, and this was all sprayed out using a Marshmaster, which you see here on the bottom left. This is a semi-amphibious vehicle that allows the contractor to go into these hard to reach areas and spray Phragmites. On the right, this is a map sent to us from the contractor, and all those little red lines are the actual tracks that the Marshmaster made. So you can see the coverage of that is really extensive, and will in future years, we'll stay on top of it. Harry and the Wetlands Initiative will be scheduling some additional management here and at other sites in 2022. But again, really happy to see water levels were low, able to treat Phragmites next year should lead to some exciting results. And the final site, MLK, last year was a really banner year for MLK South. We had the first prescribed burn there, and that was following some aerial herbicide treatments that we used to combat Phragmites. So these 3 pictures that you're seeing here are your little Cal crew hard at work out there doing follow-up work in some of the intermediate areas where we either the burn didn't cover extensively, or the Phragmites was too close to the tree line, or some other reason why the helicopter couldn't get that close. And you can see in the bottom left there, that band of green that's running across, that's all Phragmites resprout. So that whole area was totally burned. And you can see just how beneficial burns are, because let me just go back to the previous photo. You can see all that dead vegetation in the top left picture. If you don't get a burn in, the next year the Phragmites grows, and when you go out to spray, you're spraying maybe 50% new growth and 50% dead growth. So that's a waste of herbicide, and you're not getting full coverage on the Phragmites. And so in this picture on the bottom left, you can see that's all green. There's no dead vegetation obstructing it, so every drop of herbicide is going to be hitting that Phragmites, and it's going to give us a better chance of eliminating it in the short term. So again, going back to the low water levels, that provided us with an unprecedented opportunity to do some plug planting. So tiny little wetland plants, just a couple inches tall. We were able to hire a contractor to get into the northwest corner, about in this area here that I'm circling on the map there. And we were able to plug nearly 3,000 plants in there. That's going to give us a chance to provide species that will actively compete with cattails and Phragmites, which are a huge problem in this wetter part of MLK in the northern zone. Again, you see in the bottom right, that footprint of the prescribed burn from last time. And I wanted to just include this map on the left. So this, we have planned to do another aerial spray at MLK in 2021. Just to really hammer that Phragmites again, especially after that prescribed burn. We have had some issues getting permission and permits from the city of Gary for aerial spraying as well as prescribed burning. So the partnership that we're a part of, we're actively working with city of Gary to try to do some outreach and education around the benefits of prescribed burns and aerial spraying, not as and not letting them get lumped into kind of this idea that all burning is the same. We wouldn't in a prescribed burn situation be putting any smoke onto neighborhoods nearby. But in the interim, we'll keep doing maintenance and work on the ground and work with the city of Gary to get permission for that in future years. Since Craig Zanstra was not able to be here today, I told him that I would deliver his crew update from the Little Cal crew. They've been working over the last month in the southwest part of MLK South. This is really important work to establish an access trail in the southwest corner. So that area that you see in yellow is not necessarily the exact route that the trail will take. But in working with contractors, we've learned that this access point is really crucial for Phragmites management, because any prescribed burns or any aerial spraying that we're able to do in the future will not be able to hit those Phragmites close to the tree line there. So we need an access point for contractors to drive a vehicle in to access those areas on foot. And so the crew has been working. It's been really great. We all went out there in early January. We all checked out the area. We kind of plotted a route for the trail to take, and the Lake County Parks has graciously lent a ton of their additional staff outside of the crew and some of their heavy machinery to come in and clear some of these areas. And you can see here, this picture was sent to us, a giant downed tree, a large cottonwood that they had to call in the cavalry with some larger equipment to cut through there. And so that will be a really important access point in the future, and really just thankful for the Lake County Parks staff for getting out there with the big machines. Looking forward to 2022, kind of winding down here. Just want to talk really quickly, not about the data that you're seeing on the screen, but just some tools that Audubon has developed to work with land managers that will impact the work that's happening along the Little Cal. So we've got two kind of online-based tools. This is the Marshburg Monitoring Hub that will be working with landowners over the next month or so to have one-on-one conversations to help them understand where these marsh birds are at their site and what the implications are. So in this case, you can see all of these little colored dots represent a different bird species. All of those little, you probably can't see it, those little binocular symbols are monitoring points. And those are all the locations of birds that we found. And so we can key in on areas where birds are and aren't, and that can help us make decisions about where we should mobilize resources, where we should really pay attention to doing some additional habitat work. The other tool is we're still developing this. It's a vegetation, the vegetative component of what you just saw with the birds. We're doing extensive vegetation monitoring at all of the sites that we're monitoring birds. And over time, this will help us really quantify the difference in the change in Phragmites abundance and cattail abundance, and then getting to this hemi-marsh. You can see here the proportion of open water to emergent herbaceous plants. We want to get that about 50-50, and at this site, they're almost achieving that. But this will give us a great library of images of all of these sites. And this also will be one of the things that we're going over with the landowners, helping them understand a little bit more clearly how the bird data and the vegetation data help inform each other and can help them make decisions outside of the little Cal on a lot of these landowners that have very limited resources and have to make tough decisions about, do I manage for birds? Do I manage
Daniel,
for
is
plants?
this our site? I mean, I appreciate all the other landowners and all the birds that are there as well, because that's a lot. But can we focus on where our stuff is and the things that we're focused on? Is this a part of our particular project?
This is not. This is on the Illinois side. We don't have the Indiana data up there yet. So this is just an example showing kind of what data is going to be.
Stop, no.
Sure. The next thing I just want to talk about, the slide is not very visually appealing, but we are actively developing management plans for MLK South, for the Rookery, and for Chase Street wetlands. And so we've got a team together of folks, including Audubon Wetlands Initiative and the Nature Conservancy. Lake County Parks is involved as well. And we hope to, by the summer, have management plans in place that will help the commission, will help anyone who's interested in learning more about these sites understand the trajectory that these sites are on and kind of what's going to need to happen in order for these sites to be successful long term.
Mr. Repay, do you have a copy of that?
No.
Can you please send a copy of that to Mr. Repay?
I sure will.
Thank you.
And just my last slide here, in 2022, things that we're going to continue doing, we're going to keep doing Marshburg monitoring. The contractor work, as I mentioned before, is going to continue at our focal sites. Harry's going to talk a little bit about the water control structure installation. Already mentioned the landowner one-on-ones, and in addition, going to continue through our Wild Indigo program, doing education and outreach across the Little Cal Basin footprint, as well as doing some volunteer stewardship events, hopefully in the spring if conditions allow. So again, just want to thank you for the funding that you've given us. Really exciting progress, and we're excited to see how that continues developing this year.
Outstanding. So Daniel, are you new to this project now?
Not new to the project, but new to kind of managing a lot of the day-to-day work. So I've been involved on the fringes for the last 2 or 3 years.
So you're the new day-to-day guy.
Yeah.
Congratulations, way to go.
Thank
All
you
right,
very
so we're
much.
looking forward to working with you. So as it relates to the Phragmites, you saw a lot of pictures with regards to that. Before you bring your colleague up, how are you doing the annual year-over-year maintenance for what you burned last year, about 2 years ago? And as we move through this, is that a part of everything that we renew, that you continue to make sure that we're not just doing what the engineering group and construction group did on this particular project, but build it and then forget about it?
Right.
And then we have problems. So the maintenance of, as you move forward and try to continue to do that, that's one question. So is that something that is part of your management plan that we'll be able to see? And will you make those presentations to the point where you show us what our follow-up maintenance on projects that might have been in previous years, so we can kind of follow that progression?
Absolutely.
As well as the new stuff and the birds and the new plant? I mean, those are good. And then with the Phragmites, did they bring you up to speed about some of the neighboring or contiguous property owners, specifically like NDOT, that, doing all of this great work, and then across the street, I'm looking at, acres of this stuff. It kind of doesn't make much sense to me. So I'm trying to expand the project of that, so we're not taking care of one section, but leaving them to run wild across the street.
Yeah.
So, the Rookery is a perfect place. I mean, that's a perfect example. I mean, right at the light, right across the street in the ditch, I'm looking at all the Phragmites because that's where the line was.
Right.
So how do we have that type of a discussion so we could not create any undue liability for you, yet still try to engage our contacts to be efficient in taking care of this?
We'd be very happy to be connected with some of those contacts that haven't been part of the conversations to date, because like you said, it's a fool's errand to do intensive management at a site without identifying the source for potential new reinfestations of the same species. And so as we're doing this annual management, we don't simply do the treatment one year and then move on to another area the next year. It involves scouting the area you worked the year before, making sure that that's under control before you really start investing. Because the first time you do a Phragmites treatment, you're triggering a kind of a process that's going to take multiple years.
I get it, and that's what I want to have the updates on that we're doing exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and then we have basically the MLK and everything moving down towards the to Highland. Is that the only segment that you're working on, or are you looking at bringing in new segments?
Those are the only segments we're working on now. We want to make sure before we take on more acres that the acres we've already started managing are in a good place. And so
what's the forecast of a good place? I'm always looking for the good place.
Yeah, so I mean, a good place is where you can get someone to go out there with a backpack sprayer and hit any tiny little Phragmites that are coming up, things that don't require sending out a small army to tackle or sending out a helicopter to tackle. So in all these areas, it's going to require diligence for many years, although not the intensive type of resources that have been given to date.
Right. And I appreciate that. And then, as far as the other resources and trying to make sure that you don't have obstacles like getting permits for some of the municipalities that we spend millions of dollars in trying to make sure that they don't flood, those would be things that we'd be happy to know. I'm not saying we'll be able to help, but we could have conversations outside of your office. Specifically, also going back to the Phragmites and INDOT, they're not real helpful in getting approvals, but I can take some hits for some of that kind of stuff. So it's just where and when, and have some idea of when it's going to be viable.
Awesome. Yeah, I can put together a report on some of that and send it to you.
All right, gentlemen, any other questions for this young man?
I think you covered it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. My name is Harry Kuttner. I'm with the Wetlands Initiative. I'm the new Calumet coordinator. It's a new position, so I've been on board for about 6 months.
Welcome, Harry.
Thank you. Thanks for having me tonight. So my boss, Gary Sullivan, who's our senior ecologist, has presented to you all a number of times. But tonight, I want to sort of follow up on what Daniel started to talk about and do a really brief overview of the two stop log water control structures that we're hoping to get installed this year at Highland Rookery and MLK South Wetland. So we're sort of in the second phase of managing at these sites. And, we've been focusing on Phragmites, other invasive management, and herbicide application only gets you so far to establish hemimarsh, conditions for hemimarsh to develop. We really need some water level management to make these sites resources for community and wildlife.
Keep the water moving.
Exactly. Yeah. So Daniel's talking about water levels are extremely low recently. So essentially the way that it works right now at Highland Rookery and MLK South is that during dry periods, the water just drains from the site, and low water levels in turn lead to conditions that Phragmites and other invasive species want to take advantage of. Hemimarsh is not able to establish unless you have about 1.5 feet or 2 feet depth ponding area. So we're talking about installing relatively small concrete stop log water control structures. And essentially these structures would be installed in the outlet channels of these two sites. They'll allow for 2-foot change in ponding depth in some of these sites. And essentially they're passive systems. So they'll be set up with all stop logs in place. Once they're set up, there's virtually no maintenance required to maintain ecological function. So what I mean by that is you put in the stop logs, precipitation builds up over time, and you could get up to 2 feet depth of ponding because of those. But land managers don't need to come in every month to check on the structure. There's not really anything that they have to do outside of regular invasive management for Hemi Marsh to begin to establish. We're just trying to get that hydrology back to normal. These structures, the proposal that we're using for these structures, the design we're using for the structures is something that the Army Corps of Engineers basically recommended, put together in a planning assistant to state report that they provided for our partnership at the beginning of last year. So the structures will have a net zero impact on flood control. And there is no maintenance required to maintain flood control function. So the boards are in place during a major flood event on the Little Cal. These structures are small enough that they will not impact the ability of flood holding capacity within the levee system, which is obviously the most important thing above maintaining Hemi Marsh habitat. So really quickly, this is from that Army Corps report. So it's a really basic design, essentially 2 foot tall concrete structure, about a foot wide. And then there's a 3 foot wide by 2 foot tall opening in the structure where you could put in wooden stop log boards in 6-inch lifts to change the water level. So periodically, land manager, which right now is our partnership, working with Lake County Parks crew, periodically we'll take down water levels to do plug plantings to reach hard to access areas.
Manage.
Exactly. So just to show you where these structures are going, so Highland Rookery in the northeast corner is a riprap lined outlet channel. So this is going to go at the southern end of that channel. The structure will extend, I think, about 4 feet below grade and be keyed in to the sides of the outlet channel to prevent erosion. MLK South, the outlet channel is a little less well defined. It hasn't been channelized with riprap. And it's in the northwest corner of the site. So here's an aerial photo. It's pretty small. It's about 8 or 10 feet wide. It's a lot smaller than the Highland Rookery channel. So here we're going to be working in native or existing soils, but there's not going to really be a loss of wetland habitat.
Not native still. Shocking.
So here, this is a little confusing, but this is basically that same aerial photo zoomed in a little bit. We've been doing extensive work to figure out who exactly owns the land. So at Highland Rookery, that's the Basin Commission owning that. There's a private owner and Nature Conservancy owns it. MLK South, it's primarily owned by Gary Parks and Recreation, but there are 2 different sets of natural gas pipelines directly south, directly north of our work area. So there's a Wolverine easement running across most of the site south of the work area. The location where we're proposing to put in the structure is roughly 50 feet north of the northernmost Wolverine pipeline. We've been working with Wolverine and we're waiting on final approval to make sure that it wouldn't interfere with our operations at all. To the north, there's a NIPSCO right-of-way, which has electrical transmission lines, but there's also some gas pipelines further north. So we've been working really closely with NIPSCO. They've been a great partner. They're supportive of the invasive management, and we're also waiting on final approval from them to make sure that we wouldn't be interfering with their operations. So basically waiting on approval from those 2 organizations. We wanted to present to you all, and then we'll go to Gary Parks and Recreation next before we submit an IDEM Army Corps permit application.
So let me interrupt real
Yeah.
quick. Can I go back to that? So it's imperative that you understand that even though we have a certain understanding, if you're looking for interaction with some of the folks like NIPSCO or Wolverine, is that as a part of that project that it runs through the Little Cal office so we know what you're doing, because we obviously have a lot of interactions with those particular entities elsewhere, and walking into a situation where we're not aware of certain things or discussions that might have been had, not on our behalf, would be unfortunate.
Absolutely understood. Yeah, and Daniel and I spoke to Dan about a month ago. I kind of brought him up to speed on what I'm presenting today, but yeah,
I'm sure you're doing it. I'm just making sure I stay it so everybody can listen, and it's because that's important.
As soon as we get approval or any communication from NIPSCO, we'll pass that on. NIPSCO and we'll pass that on to Dan.
And we're talking about before you start that initiative, because sometimes maybe we have things that there's other ideas because there's more than one way to make chicken.
Understood.
All right, thank you.
So that's about it. So, just to recap, these structures are designed to help establish those heavy marsh conditions, but they're also a really key tool to help control Phragmites, help flood out new growth, stuff like that. And yet again, just hammering that home that there is a net zero impact on flood control.
Outstanding. Thank you. Is that it?
That's it.
Any questions, gentlemen? Outstanding. Thank you very much. When would the next one of these be, though? Now, as we start getting ready for ramping up in spring, when do you foresee the next update?
I mean, we're happy to come as frequently as you'd like. I think.
When you have stuff done.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I want to see where birds are in Illinois, I don't necessarily want to do that.
Yeah. So we are hoping we're planning on submitting the permit applications for these structures in the next month, ideally. But the structure construction would take place in this summer.
And have you seen these structures? Any plans for these?
Yeah.
All right.
So I think maybe early summer, late spring,
Okay.
to give you an update on permitting, might make sense.
That and whatever's going on, if you're doing anything or needed to do a burn or something, have challenges with that way ahead of time so we could start helping with that as well.
Understood.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your support.